I miss the days of swinging my arms around with a Wiimote like in Zelda's Skyward Sword or Twilight Princess, and playing games with my feet like with DDR. So I added those things to Skyrim. I was currently on my first playthrough of Skyrim, a walkthrough, and I was already using a setup where I had to jog in place to move in the game, but I was just using a normal controller. And while this was still fun from a fitness standpoint, I thought I could make it more fun by adding some motion controls. I'm using a program called reWASD in order to do this. reWASD is basically just remapping software that allows you to make the buttons or motion on your controller do whatever you want on a computer. Additionally, there's a phone app that allows you to add buttons on your screen or make your phone's motion do whatever you want on your computer, and it creates and activates a virtual controller. It's honestly super cool. As I mentioned, there are two components to this setup: hand motion and foot motion. For my hand motion controls, I have to swing my arms to attack. I'm using some knockoff Joy-Cons called Bin Box, but I think they got rebranded or something because I can't find them anymore. The way the controller works is mostly similar to how a normal controller works, but with a slight difference. The triggers by default don't do anything when I press them, but when I hold the right trigger and swing my arm, then I attack. And the longer I continue to move while holding the right trigger, it's kind of like holding the right trigger to do a power attack. So if I do like a really big exaggerated swing, it's basically represented in the game, and I really like that a lot. On this playthrough, I'm mostly using the restoration spell to heal in my left hand. But again, left trigger on this setup doesn't do anything by default. So the best way that I've found to do magic spells is to kind of like hold the right trigger and then spin my arm in a circle. Spinning it in a circle works better than kind of like shaking it back and forth, because the way that this works is that it requires smooth and continuous movement in order to like hold the virtual controller button down. And so I don't know if that's super obvious with the footage here that I'm like spinning it in a circle rather than just kind of like shaking it back and forth. All right, now let's get on to the foot controls. For my foot motion controls, I have to jog in place in order to move in the game. And so the way that this works is that reWASD also has a phone app, and when I put my phone in my pocket and I jog in place, then I move forward. So if I want to go forward in the game, I don't have to press anything. I just jog in place. And here's another way that my controls are just a little bit different than normal controls. If I want to go any other direction other than forward, I have to hold left, down, or right on my D-pad in order to go left, backwards, or right in the game. And I'm basically using what are called shift layers in reWASD. Steam Input has a very similar concept where basically if you hold a button down, it makes the rest of your buttons do other things. So kind of like the shift key on your computer, if you hold shift, then your keys do different things. And so whenever I hold the D-pad left, down, or right, it makes the motion on my phone make me go left, backwards, or right. So basically I jog in place to go forward, and then I press the other directions to go the other directions while jogging in place. Unfortunately, to use these shift layers, I had to sacrifice the joystick because reWASD requires the shift layer activation buttons to be digital inputs like the D-pad rather than an analog input like the joystick. So the D-pad and the joystick are switched, but it's not a big deal, and I think it's still super intuitive once you figure this out to play the game like this. Honestly, Skyrim is the perfect game for this, because while it's a pretty decently large open map, they've done such a good job at creating paths from place to place, which is kind of funny because I feel like most people when they play Skyrim, they don't even follow the paths, they just kind of see the quest marker and they go directly in that direction. I stick to the paths. I'm a rule follower, I'm a vanilla guy, I guess. I don't know. Playing the game with this control scheme is a little bit more difficult than playing the game normally, but not as much as you might expect. I'm playing the game on novice difficulty, which is the easiest difficulty in the game, and honestly, it felt very easy. I didn't have to be very careful. I was kind of just saving a lot. I didn't really keep very many potions on me. Whenever I eventually beat the game, I think I beat the game at level 12, which is pretty early, and so I didn't really have to spend very much time leveling up or anything. It was kind of a cakewalk. But the point of this is to kind of show you that this is possible. This is completely viable. If you want to do this setup yourself, I've created a configuration that you can download and add to your own reWASD. And so if you want to do this, you can increase the difficulty in the game, and it's perfectly viable. I've done a separate challenge where I had a very, very similar setup to this, mostly with just the foot controls, and I was able to beat Bleak Falls Barrow with this on Legendary.
This looks like a trap. Should I go here, guys? Oh! I think I found the button to set off the trap. Yes, let's go!
So it's completely doable. I just was doing this more for the fitness rather than the difficulty and challenge of the game. But it's up to you. Also, if you're wondering about the step count, I'm using another app called Stepl, which allows you to do a very similar setup, but a much simpler way to do this. So if you're interested in that, be sure to check out my guide. For both of the apps that I can do this kind of a setup with, reWASD and Stepl, they both have a 7-day free trial. So if you want to check them out, be sure to check out my guides on my YouTube channel and feel free to try it out yourself. One more thing on a more technical standpoint, the controllers that I'm using also have a grip button on them. And so if I was to do this again, what I probably would do is have the grip buttons be the things that activate my motion controls with my hands, and then have the triggers just kind of do what triggers normally do. So like if I was wanting to, say, shoot an arrow with a bow, I would just use the triggers, but then use the grip buttons for actually swinging. The way that I've used the setup in this game, I'm outputting to a normal controller, but I have previously made my setup output to keyboard and mouse, which has allowed me to basically use my controller as like a laser pointer sort of a thing, and I can like actually aim with my controller to shoot. If you want me to make a video about that, be sure to let me know. It's a little bit different of a setup. I think this is much more straightforward, but that is possible if you are somebody who, you know, really needs the stealth archer build and wants to use the setup. Again, if you want to know how to do this, be sure to check out my guide on YouTube. I think I've called it like Wii-like controls, how I've added Wii controls to games or something like that. And if you use my link in the description for reWASD, it will support me a little bit. It doesn't make it cost anything more to you, but it supports me. And let me know what other games I should try to Wii-ify. I've been working on a configuration for Hogwarts Legacy because I think that it's really fun to like swing my arms around to use spells, and maybe I've also added some voice commands in order to cast some spells in the game. Protego! Yes! So if you're interested in that, be sure to like and subscribe, and otherwise I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.